All right, great night tonight. We have the legendary tennis coach Nick Saviano on the Florida Tennis Podcast with Adam Ross. Nick, how are you tonight?
I feel great. Life is good.
That is awesome. Now, we are lucky to have Nick. He is the cover of our November, December 2025 issue. And he wrote a nice inscription for me, Nick. I don't want to embarrass you or me, but I got to read this. To Adam, a lot of great years of tennis. Thank you for the friendship. And Nick, thank you. It has been an honor to get to know you over the years, to spend time with you. It's also been very cool to actually watch you in action as you're imparting your tennis knowledge. The way you do it is very interesting. You're able to break things down in a simple, direct way, which we'll get into a little bit because I think that's such a key when you're dealing with anyone and not making it overly complicated. But this is the part you're not going to like, Nick, because I have to do a little bit of your background. I know you're a very humble guy, but former professional tennis player, longtime coach. You're one of the most, I would say, respected voices in call it long-term player development. You've coached at every level of the game, junior players, major champions, decades, thinking deeply about the game, about how to make players grow. I would say both as competitors, but also as people and human beings too, which is important, and we'll get to that. Um, you've consistently argued throughout your career for patience, accountability, and developing players the right way. Right now, you have the wonderful, and I visited you the other day at the Saviano High Performance Tennis Academy in beautiful Davie, Florida. As I mentioned, you are on the cover of the magazine, but you're also the author. Got to throw this in here of an excellent book. This is called, got my bookmark in there, Maximum Tennis: 10 Keys to Unlocking Your On-Court Potential. Now I have to
That's
note
right.
the following. I have to note the following. I know you don't want me to do this, Nick, but I have to. Just a little snippet of what Chris Evert said in the forward, which I love. She wrote, and this is from Chris Evert, not too shabby. It is the only book I've seen that lays out all the intangibles that will help you play to your full potential. No matter how you play or what level you're starting from, you'll be a better player from reading the book. That's what the maximum in maximum tennis means. You've got the absolute most out of your ability to play, and win or lose, you will enjoy the journey. Nick, big words
Wow.
from Chris Evert. Can you talk a little bit about the most important concepts for both players, coaches, and someone like me who's struggling to hit a backhand?
Well, first of all, going back to your original point about the quote in the magazine that I wrote about the friendship, you've always been wonderful to me. Um, Even before I knew you very much, I always could sense your enthusiasm for tennis and would always see you around, and we'd always stop and chat a little bit. So I've appreciated the friendship, even though we haven't directly interacted extensively. With regards to Chris Evert, what can you say about her? A Hall of Famer, all-time great, but just as great as she is in tennis, she's that kind of a person. And I wrote that book a long time ago. I'm in the process of working towards finishing another one. But that was, I wrote that and it published in 2002. And I'm most proud of the book because my main emphasis in there were fundamental principles. And whether it be fundamental principles in terms of, strategy, tactics, technique, uh, development, the psychological components of the game. And fundamental principles don't go away quickly. And so what I'm proud of is that a lot in the book is still relevant. And as I'm working towards the new book that I'm working on, one of the key components I've really expanded on is fundamental principles of life success. And as I've coached over the years, this has become far more important to me. It always has been important, but really your philosophy, or in my case, my philosophy, has crystallized and it's formulated over the years. And it's just emphasized in my mind the incredible importance and responsibility that goes with coaching. And as I spend, go over the years and I spend time with these young people, I've said it for years, and I've said it in every interview because I believe it so strongly. You work with young people, it's a sacred trust to the child and to the parents. And as I've aged and now, I've been married 43 years and I've got daughters that are 42, 38, 36. I've got, believe it or not, 8 grandchildren. And, I know how important our children are to us. I know how precious they are. And because of that, it's intensified my sense of responsibility and commitment to each one of those children. And one final thing is that I believe every person has a human spirit. And each child has a human spirit in them that is longing to soar, to accomplish great things in their life. And if in any small way we can help that child, either in their self-confidence, in their backhand that helps their self-confidence, in any way to have a better life, then to me, it's really one of the things that keeps me motivated even today.
Well, Coach, first of all, hearing you have 8 grandchildren, you look fabulous. Let me just say that you're looking great.
Well, thank you.
That was just well, that was one of the comments, by the way.
I feel great. I feel
Good.
great. I'm blessed. I try to stay in shape. I love being on the court. Love working with kids. Love working with parents and other coaches.
Is that one of the things that keeps you young? As I was over there at the academy, I was kind of sneaking around. I was watching you serve a little bit and asking some of the kids about the serve. Does it keep you young to be around these young people and meet all these new young people all the time?
It does. And I love it seeing young kids with big dreams. But in my philosophy, one of the things that I want the young people to grasp is the importance of incremental growth, of relentless growth as an individual, as a player, and so on. And I believe that down to my core. So there's not a day that I wake up in the morning and I feel that I have enough knowledge in coaching. There's not a day that I don't really long to gather good information, hopefully, acquire some wisdom each and every day, and to impart these principles using tennis as a vehicle by which to accomplish it that are meaningful. I've often say to players, even young ones, I said, you may not fully understand what I'm saying now. My hope is that you'll even get it 20 years from now. You may understand it as you go along. But one of the things about things that are profoundly important that you learn on the court, whether it's keeping your cool under pressure, patience, tolerance, forgiving yourself, rising above adversity, discipline. These things, as you get older, you understand them in deeper components to it. And so my hope is that these young people 10, 20, 30 years from now will maybe look back for a moment and say, my time at Saviano's or spending with Nick Saviano was a positive in their life. And in fact, one of the joys I've had is multiple players that I've worked with from a young age have come back with their children that I've worked with. So that's pretty cool.
That's got to be great. And Coach, you reminded me of just a couple of things. I had Murphy Jensen on the pod, and he talked about his father, he was really a football coach who kind of morphed into tennis, but his father was not about the wins and the losses. It was about the incremental growth and giving 100%. So many times we find parents and kids and all of us focused on wins and losses, but is it a fair statement that you're more process oriented, detail oriented, effort oriented as a coach?
Well, yes, but there's subtle distinctions there that are really important. John Wooden, who was, one of the all-time great coaches and philosophers, um, just a brilliant guy. I've followed a lot of what he used to say. And they said, well, he rarely discussed victories. in the practices and their preparation. And obviously, he won 10 NCAA championships in 12 years. But that does not mean that winning isn't important. And it's really important that parents and coaches don't diminish the significance of winning. Rather, they say winning is an important byproduct of a good process of striving to be the best you can be, deriving success from victories and from defeats, and learning from victories. Maybe they weren't that successful, and learning from defeats. So, yes, I'm very big on the process and staying focused. I often tell the kids that your number one goal is not winning. That's not the number one goal. The number one goal is to go out and execute as well as you can, compete, problem solve, and give yourself the best chance to play your finest tennis and the best chance to win that particular match. So the idea is that even if they win a match, they're constantly trying to improve their skills. And if they lose a match, they don't, it's not an act of futility. They're growing, they're evolving, they're improving. And these are messages, just this week with, the level 3 tournament in Florida. And, um, even recently, talking with some very highly ranked world-class players in their pre-match um, assessments of what they need to do.
Well, I did notice the coaching pyramid from John Wooden over your right shoulder. I saw, so
Yeah,
I thought that's a great sign, because
yeah.
I have read and I'm a huge fan of John Wooden. But you had some pretty knowledgeable contributors on in your book. I'll just name a few: Jim Courier, Chris Evert, Nick Bollettieri, Patrick McEnroe, Dennis Vandermeer, Brad Gilbert, Dick Gould. And I did have a chance, just as an aside, to talk to Dick Gould a little bit. I know he coached you, and I have to say I see a lot of Dick Gould in you, just talking to you about process and his players loved him. He wrote a fantastic book where he kind of unpacked a lot of things, and his players wrote about culture and team culture. So Pam Shriver, Billie Jean King, Stan Smith. What was it like working with those individuals, including Dick Gould, and I know this is a broad question, but what do they bring to the table that you've been able to kind of absorb through speaking with them and working with them?
Well, first of all, Dick Gould gave me my first tennis lesson at 12 years old at our local club. And then he matriculated on into college and then went to Stanford. And about 7 or 8 years later, I was being recruited at Stanford with Dick Gould. And he's been a wonderful mentor and friend for my life. One of my best friends, I could clearly say, and mentors that I've had throughout my life. Listen, that's a very impressive group that were gracious enough to be part of the book by really doing the introduction for each chapter. And what I did there is I went to them and I said, just if they'd be willing to read the chapter and then they could speak, and I would take that dictation about what their thoughts were, write it down, sent it back to them. We reworked it. So those words in there are actually their words, really responding to what was written. So it was very, very not only helpful for the book, which sold quite well over the years, but more, sitting down and speaking with really super bright people, people that have accomplished truly great things. It's very humbling. And, I consider myself like a blue collar coach. I work very hard. I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm constantly trying to improve. And I don't just say that. This is not just to sound I don't know, magnanimous or that I'm, yeah, oh yeah, I just try to improve. No, it's relentless. It's exciting for me. I want to grow and evolve. And when you ask me about keeping you young, that's one of the keys. You stay sharp, hopefully mentally, intellectually, emotionally, you challenge yourself. And I challenge myself every day. And I have to, it can be really humbling because, you know, I often say I always reserve the right to be wrong. And so I don't make a lot of big mistakes. I don't make a lot of mistakes out on the court. But I do make mistakes. And when you learn a lot and you're constantly learning, you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, if I'm so smart, why didn't I know that 6 months ago? So you kind of keep yourself in check and say, you know what? I do know a lot of things, but the amount that needs to be learned is infinitesimal. I mean it's infinite,
Right.
and so it keeps you pretty humble.
Well, Coach, you mentioned a new book. Can you talk about anything in relation to that new book for everyone watching the pod? Maybe a quick preview, or are you able to do that, or is that under wraps for now?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm formulating it because I want when you're developing players or you're a contributor in their development, there's you have other coaches, you have other like physical trainers, but you have the parents. And there's so much that I want to pass on to young parents that are going through this for the first time. They're going through raising their children for the first time, adolescents through the first time. I'm into my 43rd year, let alone with my own children. I come from a very large family. I have over 100 nieces and nephews and great nieces and nephews. And so with all this experience, and watching other great players evolve or other people that you thought might be great, but they're not, and you look at other sports, do you start to see the commonalities, which are really important, that you want to pass on sometimes to the parents? Look, this is not a sprint, this is a long developmental process. Here are key things you want to emphasize. And not to say it from a holier than thou or sanctimonious kind of perspective, but really from a caring. And I want to get this in the book. And the challenge is that it starts to become a book unto itself. And then I don't even get to the tennis component that I want. So I have to make a fundamental decision how I want to divide it up or possibly into two books. So we'll see. I'm still in that process, but I do write almost every morning.
Coach, that's great news because I can't wait to get a copy of that book and have you back on the pod to discuss that book. All right, that sounds awesome. Coach, the reality is that not many players can turn professional, but they can still have an incredible journey with tennis throughout their lives. Um, do you get as much satisfaction out of helping someone, let's say, win a major versus helping someone get a college scholarship, seeing them become successful human beings? Can you measure one against the other, or just talk about the different experiences you have in that regard?
Let me just, I'm looking you in the eye through the computer.
Okay.
I'm telling you the joy that I get when I get a phone call to hear the parents and the child excited about the school they got into. It's just enormous. And, I got a text the other day, and it was from this person will remain anonymous.
Sure.
but I'll tell you, I'm not embellishing the story. And yeah, I've said this to a few people. So, as you know, I worked with Amanda Anisimova for a lot of years. And some people know that, some people don't. Some people
Sure.
know I worked with Coco Gauff when she's younger, some people don't. I don't market it the names. I don't put it in ads. Um, if I speak with people or if I help them, even recently, I won't post a picture if I was training with them unless it's something that they want. I just don't like to do that. But this one gentleman, he's a gentleman now. He was a kid. This was in 2014. He was at our academy and he was trying to get into. He got into one of the Ivy Leagues. Brilliant kid, and he was trying to make the tennis team. And we came down and we worked really hard with him. And he just missed it and didn't quite make it. So, anyway, great guy. He goes on. And, I kind of lose track with him. But he texts me after Amanda gets to the finals of Wimbledon. He says, "Oh, I just wanted to touch base. It was tough seeing Amanda's match. That's the one she lost." Who
Sure.
I text immediately after that match because let me tell you what, I want to digress here.
Sure.
One of the things that I think is so important, very few people put themselves in a position to accomplish great things. They don't have the courage, the work ethic, the commitment to do it. So I made sure that in my communications to let her know how proud she should be of herself and that it was going to be the first of many great accomplishments in getting to far in Grand Slams. And that was at Wimbledon. And of course, she did well a few
Yeah.
months later.
Sure.
So, anyway, going back to the story, this guy sent me, said, "Well, it's great, to see that." And then he says, "By the way, after I left, I think it was Dartmouth, I went and graduated from Stanford Law School. And then I went and I started interning in Austin, Texas. And then I just got an internship for the judge in New York. And then I was, fortunate enough I won't even mention the Supreme Court justice, but I'm interning for one of the
Wow.
Supreme Court justices." And he said, "I just wanted to let you know that, even though I didn't make the team, the things that you taught me about, working hard were principles that I used throughout the school and throughout this whole process. And it helped me enormously. And I just wanted to say thank you for taking an interest."
Wow.
And that was somebody from 10 years ago. And I get things like that. I got a Christmas card from a parent whose child was with us in 2008. It's a long time ago.
Sure.
And he said, "Thank you for," and this was so meaningful to me. "Thank you for being the perfect, um, what was the word he used? Like guide for him and his wife, an example with how to handle things, and the perfect coach for our son." And his son was a very good player. I won't go into it, but if you want to talk about motivation, that's not about Grand Slams, but that gives me a sense of depth, of purpose in what I'm doing. I just want I don't want to be famous. I don't care about that. I don't care that everybody in the world knows you. It's not important to me. But what is important to me is that the people that I'm blessed to spend time with, whether it's the coaches, the parents, and those players, that they feel that the relationship was a positive for them as it was for me, and that it was helpful to them. If I can do that, I'll keep coaching and working with people as long as under the grace of God, as long as I'm healthy enough to do
Coach, that is inspirational. I'm ready to run through a wall for you, but we're on Zoom. But
it.
that is good stuff.
It's just
Wow.
how I feel. It's really how I feel. And, I wake up in the morning and, I'm thinking, thank you. I'm healthy. I feel great. I've got good energy and I'm excited to learn and grow. And it's a wonderful blessing for me.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. You get up in the morning, you're heading to Saviano High Performance Tennis Academy in Davie. What is it like for you there, and how is it structured, and what can a parent expect when they send their child to your care, your charge?
Well, I'm smiling because it's quite a long time between when I get up and when I go to the
Okay.
courts.
Okay.
I get up very early, and I get my sleep, but I'll get up anywhere from 4 to 4:30 in the morning, and that's when I love my cup of tea and a strong cup of tea and a little bit of honey, some milk, and then I read, and then I start writing and writing or reflecting. I have things that I personally want to accomplish, like I said, with personal growth, and kind of plan my day. And then I often start teaching at 7, if not 7, 8 would be the latest. And then I'm on the courts there for a few hours. We start at 9:45 in the morning. A lot of kids will have private lessons before that. The kids do like 30 minutes of very hard, um, it's a warm up, but also physical training. And then we'll do 2 hours of tennis until 12. Then we have a break till 2. Then at 2 to 4, 2 more hours, then another hour of physical training. And, I'm out there in a month, if there's 20 days in the month, Monday to Friday. I'm there at least 18 days, if all day, if not 19, if not 20. So I'm there all the time, and I really enjoy working with the kids. But it's more than that. It's when people make a commitment to Saviano High Performance Tennis, I take it seriously. And when I talk about improvement, that's what I expect at the academy. And if people want to see, I don't lose my temper, but if people want to see me get my Italian American emotions up, just start to be sloppy or not have the commitment to the kids. It's just not, or not to understand and empathize with a parent that is passionate about their child. That's something that I will not have. The people at our academy that work for us are first and foremost really good people. Second, they have really, really outstanding tennis backgrounds. Third, they're going to follow the basic philosophy that I have, the Saviano kind of system, philosophy, methodology, which is a living kind of evolving system, which is it's not rigid, but it's predicated on fundamental principles of life success, fundamental principles of coaching and parenting, teaching, mentoring. That's all tied in one. And then fundamental principles of tennis, whether it's technique, strategy, tactics, all of that, and then high performance principles. Those are the principles that you're going to teach the highest end kids that are trying to reach for the stars, so to speak. And then you're always integrating the latest high, technology and cutting edge stuff. So the academy runs that way, and then we have a 4:45 to 7 o'clock program for locals that are not in the full-time program, and we take that very seriously as well. So it's ongoing. I go to tournaments. I will go. I was just at a 12 and 14 and under event earlier today, in matter of fact, and yesterday. And I'll go a couple times a month. I'll put a Saturday aside. Sometimes it's Saturday and Sunday. I want to be able to see the players play. I learn a lot, and then I know what they need to work on. And then the other 2 weekends, sometimes I'll be teaching, but other times I'll visit the family on a weekend or spend time or go to our place in Naples.
Coach, I've noticed some of the most successful people like you are great time managers. Is that something you've developed over time, time management, or has it come naturally to you? How do you get all of this done?
Well, yeah, I've learned a lot. I've had some good mentors. Um, Dick Gould always impressed me. It's amazing what this man has accomplished in his life. Uh, Remarkable story. And I hope one day it is told in its fullest because I learned a lot from him about uh, really maximizing staying on task. When I was with the USTA, Dr. Ron Woods, PhD in education, he took the time to really mentor me in being organized and disciplined and structured. And I always had an affinity for it, even when I was a little guy, like 13, 14. Sunday night would come along. I would line up 5 days of training. I'd have a practice match or I'd hit with this young guy and I'd have it all laid out. So it was always kind of the way I would think the best. And then I've spent, 50, I don't talk about this. I rarely have even mentioned it publicly, but I have for 50 years worked on advanced visualization, self-hypnosis, um, all of this stuff. I was taught by a brilliant individual years ago. I started that. It's over 50 years now, and I've constantly read up and followed that. And over the years, I've actually uh, used that in working with some of the elite players, which they have felt was very helpful, and tried to share it with them in order for them to acquire the skill, not the hypnosis, but the visualization and those practices. The and that has helped me, and it helps me to be centered. It helps me to create the state of mind that I want to start with, and to really appreciate. And for the younger people, they hear it and they go, "Oh yeah, okay, fine." The older people will understand, and it acquires real wisdom to grasp the incredible blessing of the day and to realize that, yeah, you learn from yesterday. We learn from it. It's important, but you can't live in the past and you can't dwell on the future. You could plan, but not too extensively. And then, so life really exists. And for a tennis player, it's one day. One day. How are you going to maximize that day? How are you going to make it meaningful? Whether it's just simply resting, then really make the most of resting and rejuvenate. But that kind of focus on the significance and importance and the blessing to have it, because we're so blessed to be able, look, if you're playing tennis a lot of the day, you're blessed. And if you look at the world in its totality, I mean, wake up and smell the coffee because you are one of the blessed ones in this world. And as I tell the players very often, there are billions of people that will never see a day as good as your worst day. And they may not even have a hot shower or hot meal, let alone all of those luxuries, being able to train tennis, going to tournaments. Yeah, we're incredibly blessed. And when you look at it that way, when you get absorbed in how special today is, and you accept that you're looking to just get a little better each day, and the miracle of compounding improvement, or people who know finances know the power of compounding, um, where it keeps growing and growing, it goes up exponentially, then that's these are profound lessons that hopefully you don't get a young person to fully understand that. That's ridiculous. But you plant seeds, and you plant seeds of greatness, and you plant seeds of people that will be happier and more fulfilled and more disciplined, and more courage in a healthy way to accomplish all that they can be.
Coach, one of the great things about tennis is there's no time clock, and it is
No.
about the next point. I remember sitting and watching a match next to a coach, and I mumbled something about if he just takes the next 2 points, and that coach shot me a look and said, "It's the next point." It was a fisheye like you've never seen, and it really hammered home. It's about the next point, not the point before, not the point ahead. It's about that point, and that really seems like an analogy for life off the court too.
It certainly does. And coming from a guy who lost in the first round of Wimbledon after serving for the matchup 40 love, and then losing 16-14 in the fifth set, that was certainly a learning experience. Yes, it is one point, just as it is one day. And the concept of, intense focus and relentless improvement, all of these principles really help these young people.
And coach, you've used that phrase, coaching is a sacred trust. Can you expound upon that a little bit? What you mean by that and how significant that is and how that forms your coaching philosophy?
It's hugely important. Uh, it a young person, a coach, can have such a profound impact for the positive or the negative of a young person. And some people don't understand even the basics of development process of a young person. But when you get players that are 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, they don't really have a filter. When when you say something to them, that goes deeply embedded in them. If you say something positive, if you help create a vision of something exciting that they can accomplish, it goes deeply embedded in their mind. They don't forget that. Your impact is incredibly powerful, and that can be for good or for bad. And when you're a parent, as I am, and a grandparent, as I indicated, you know how precious these children are. And these are young parents. And for young coaches that don't have children, they may not fully appreciate the passion that goes with having a child and wanting them to do well. And when they entrust to you to help guide their child, whether they're young, like 9, 10, 11, 12, or others that I've worked with that are 20, 21, 22. When I was working with Jeannie Bouchard, I worked with her starting at 12, and throughout most of her career. There were a few times when we weren't working, but when I was with her, and went all the way from 30 something that one year, and we were traveling quite a bit together, and she got up to five in the world. She was 19/20 years old. She was, in a lot of ways, if you ask her, she'll tell you she was a kid. And she really looked to me for a lot of guidance. And I took that very, very seriously. And I tried to always honor that. And I think she believes that I did, because we're still very close. And in that, it's not that I'm in constant communication with her, but I have a great affection for her and a lot of the players that I've worked with over the years. So even, I get the pleasure of seeing Bob Bryan periodically because he's got a little guy
Hmm.
that's out at comes to the junior tournaments. A couple times they've been out at our place, not much, but Bob and Mike I've known since they were about 11 years old, and they're just wonderful people, and it's just exciting to see them uh, develop and grow. So yes, it's extraordinarily important to me. It's the cornerstone of my philosophy, and with that philosophy, if I'm going to accept that responsibility, that you go back and circle back. That is why I feel I am never good enough of where I'm at. And if it gets to a point where I I just don't want to learn, which I don't think will ever happen, I'm going to push as long and as hard as I can to keep improving and that's my motive. I have a responsibility to myself, to my daughters, to my grandchildren, to my wife, and to all of the young people and the parents that I work with to keep pushing forward and improve so that my communications, hopefully in some way, are going to help even a little bit.
That is phenomenal stuff, Coach. Let's talk a little bit about talent and effort. I've heard Agassi talk about if you gave him two players, give me one with supreme talent, give me one with supreme effort, kind of leans towards the player who's going to give him the effort. How do you deal with maybe a very talented player who's not kind of giving him full effort, and then you have that effort? Can you talk a little bit about that balance that you have dealing with the supremely talented and the ones who are given the full effort?
Many times, the supremely talented player has gotten some bad advice and or hasn't had great guidance. And why do I say that? When somebody is supremely talented and they're young, very often they're going to win quite a bit and and so sometimes young coaches or parents kind of they close their eyes to some things that are not what they should be in character or in discipline and work ethic because quote they're being successful. So very often the talented ones have really often not gotten the kind of guidance at a young age that they really should have or that would have helped them to have those principles of hard work, discipline, and so on. So I don't look at a talented player that doesn't work with such disdain as I do, okay, we have to provide guidance. And very often their lack of work ethic has to do with fear more than anything else because they're constantly told how talented they are. And from a psychological perspective, people start protecting that. And, when you look at the books written on mindset, um, I think it's Carol Dweck and Grit, one of those two books she wrote, they look at the perseverance, the growth mindset. And a lot of people, it's very interesting because when they gave a whole bunch of young uh, school kids a test, it's like 600, and they told half of them that this was, they said, take this test, and they all took the test, and then um, I think it came out where they all took the test, and then when they gave it back to them, they just said to one group, boy, you must work really hard. And they gave back to the other group, you're really smart. And so then they said, we're going to give you another test. And they said, but this time we can give you an easy test or a difficult test. And the ones that were said to be really hard workers all wanted the hard test. And most of the ones that were told, even though it was the same test, most of the ones that were told that they were really smart wanted to take the easy test. And the scores, oddly enough, the ones that were told worked harder got better scores as a general rule. So the people that were told they were talented were fearful. And that's very fearful of not getting a good score. They want to, the outcome became more important. So when you're dealing with, quote, talented people, one needs to understand and go beyond just the surface there to try to help that person to unleash that talent through work ethic and commitment. For me, I like that process as much as I like somebody who also is going to work hard and maybe is not talented. When I say not talented, I have yet to see or meet, and this is sincere, this is a core belief that I have, any child, any child that didn't have the capacity, given years and years and years of effort, of achieving a genius level that may not be in the particular field that we're talking about in tennis, but when you see someone become passionate and has the work ethic and the discipline, and they do it for a long period of time, I have just found it's phenomenal what they can accomplish. So for me, the quote, kid that's supposedly not talented, you work just as hard with them to bring out everything they have and really espouse those fundamental principles. Because if not in that field, they may acquire it like that gentleman I was talking about who's going to be clerking for one of the Supreme Court justices. They'll find their genius somewhere else.
Right. So you're releasing the maximum potential, but maybe it's going to another place.
Absolutely. And so every child is important. And that may sound trite. It may sound like a cliche. You know what? Don't care because it's the truth. It's what I believe. And that human spirit in each one of the children is looking to soar. And given the right direction, great things can happen.
Well, Coach Saviano, you've coached, you mentioned some great players, Jeannie Bouchard, Sloane Stephens, Amanda Anisimova, Coco Gauff at various stages, about 50 players who went on to careers in the ATP, WTA, some of the top juniors in the world, some number one players, some Olympic medalists. So here we go with where this is headed. Uh, what are this is a broad question, but what are some of the similarities if that these players possess across the board? If you were to kind of line them up and say these are one, two, or three traits they all have in common. They may be wildly different personalities who went through wildly different experiences, but what are one or two or three of the traits that you see in these players?
Courage, courage to go for their dreams. When somebody has courage, it requires a sense of humility because you are going to be vulnerable. And in order to be courageous, you have to make yourself vulnerable. And when you strive to be great at anything, you're putting yourself out there, you're putting your heart and soul in there. You don't know the outcome. And so they are vulnerable. And also to try to be the best you can be means that where you are today is not good enough. And so there's an inherent humility that comes along with it. So with courage, you have humility, you have the vulnerability, amongst other factors. With that comes the dreaming, the um, self-belief, or the willingness to work hard, to persevere, all of these basic characteristics. And almost all of them had visions of them achieving uh, great things in tennis. And usually they will have many of the better they are, the more the fundamental principles of life success they have not perfected, but mastered to a certain extent. The discipline, the focus, the ability to stay zeroed in like a laser at key times, the courage to let go of the outcome and to focus on the process, the willingness to analyze where they're at and how they can get better. All of these uh, huge benefit, characteristics of somebody with great character and integrity are what come through. And the greater the player, very often, correspondingly, the more they've mastered those fundamental principles of life success.
In a similar vein, coach, you were coached by one of the greatest coaches of all time, Dick Gould. You've been around some of the great coaches. What are some of the similarities that the great coaches have, and what are some of the things that those great coaches have imparted to you that you've learned and worked with over time?
First of all, they care. I say it's a sacred trust, that those are my words, but they all understand that. They all understood the responsibility. They all had passion and joy, which I want for all the players that are at Saviano High Performance Tennis, or anyone that I work with. Joy, passion, love for what you do. They had that. They all had the relentless desire for themselves to constantly learn and evolve. So they were always learning. And, similar in any of the sports, these principles are not only espoused, but they are lived by these other great coaches and individuals that I've been blessed to be around and to have worked with. And there have been a lot, and I've been very fortunate, and but also I've been smart enough to seek out great information and knowledge. I certainly, there was, when I was younger, like any coach, there was some arrogance. You think you know more than you do. Hopefully, that you grow past that and you start to realize, yeah, all right, I know a lot of things, but the more you learn, the more you know. There's far more to learn than what you can learn in a lifetime. So, you know, you learn, hopefully, a real sense of humility, um, that you're blessed to be able to do this. You don't have an infinite amount of time. There's always going to be someone in any particular area that knows something that you don't. They might be better at you, whatever. So try to learn as much as you can, try to impart as much as you can. These are the things that I learned from a lot of the other people, but not only them. I've met a lot of brilliant people over the years, and a lot of those principles are consistent with all of them.
Coach, the world has changed a lot over the decades. The tennis has changed a lot. Recently, I heard Mary Jo Fernandez, who was kind enough to be on this podcast at one point. She was speaking to a girls' tennis team, and they said, "What's the most important thing?" And she said, "Turn off social media." So, Coach, how, with the world changing, how do you adopt to all the changes, keep growing with it, and help all your charges and all the juniors grow with it, and try to stay on top of everything that's going on.
Well, one of the things that motivates me is that with the advent of, with AI and its kind of ubiquitous presence these days, it gives the impression of being or is everywhere. It's so important that the children keep the zest for personal growth, for learning themselves, for evolving, for not atrophying in reading, writing, in athletics, and doing things and growing. And so that's really important. And sports, the arts I wrote an article, and I haven't sent it anywhere. Maybe I'll send it to Florida Tennis
Please, we would love that.
about the fact that in sports and in the arts, artificial intelligence cannot duplicate that. People are not going to be interested to look at robots playing tennis. Um, Maybe in a small way, but people love the human interaction. People love human beings singing or performing or painting. Even though a computer can paint really well, the human element is precious. And so I want the kids, and I'm in the field of tennis and athletics, to really emphasize the sports and emphasize your own writing. Forget that a computer can write things very eloquently. Nothing will replace your human thoughts and feelings. And all of these we try to wrap into what we do in tennis, but it's the same in all the sports. And so, yes, social media has been a huge negative, not only for young people, but for adults as well. They can say there's redeeming characteristics. Oh, you can find somebody. Yeah, I hear all that. But most of the time, people are putting things on there that I think should either be personal or they're looking to project a life that is uh, superficially with devoid of problems, and they're always living their best life, so to speak, which is fine. Yeah, live your best life, but live it for you, not to see how many likes you can get on a computer. It's antithetical, meaning specifically the opposite of the principles in many ways, the principles that you want to teach young people. So my recommendation is minimize it as much as you can. Use artificial intelligence for the positive attributes and shut out the rest, and emphasize growth as a person, as an athlete, as an artist, as a performer in any way you can, and that will hold the kids in good stead.
Well, Coach Saviano, we have covered a lot of ground, and I want to close kind of going full circle here, getting back to maximum tennis and maximizing your potential. Um, if you could summarize just what is the key? This is a tough one because there's a lot covered here, but what is the key, would you say, in a few bullet points or one main bullet point to a person on and off the court maximizing their potential, which may be different for different people, but what are some of the generic keys that one can use both on and off the court to maximize their own potential?
In tennis.
In tennis or outside of tennis. Because remember, you said it yourself. You were maximizing this person's tennis, but then they used it to become a clerk for Supreme Court justice. So it clearly crosses over.
Yeah, look, first of all, is, as I said earlier, understanding the sense of blessing of the day, and say that sense of knowing you have a human spirit that wants to soar. It doesn't want to sit by comfortably. So try to be about growing, improving, evolving constantly, a little bit every day. And so, I look at your body like is a almost like a temple. This is something you have for a limited amount of time. Treat it well. Your mind, it's something that needs to be exercised and to grow. Enjoy growing. Have a joyous passion for life, for the opportunities in front of you. And from that, everything else stems. I don't want to get too philosophical, but you know, love for me, the word love, unconditional love is the most powerful emotion in the world. And if someone is loved unconditionally, if they are shown that they are significant and important via the love of parents and others that mentor, then they will see their self-worth as significant and that what they do as important. And that will be a catalyst that can be a stimulus for them to start realizing their self-esteem, their self-worth, their self-image, their self-discipline is all meant to cultivate and to grow. And when they do that, and whether it's in tennis and sports or in the arts or academia, and they have that joy for growing and learning, it's so powerful. You combine that with the passion, and it's unstoppable. Just understand that life is not easy, and it will not be easy, but embrace the challenges one day at a time, and you can accomplish anything.
Coach, on that note, wow, what a great way to bring this full circle. Coach Saviano, amazing, inspirational, motivational speaker, should be at the very top of your resume. Uh, but I can't thank you enough, Coach, on behalf of Florida Tennis Magazine, the viewers, the readers, on behalf of the Florida Tennis Podcast, on behalf of me, Adam Ross. This has been unbelievable. Thank you, Coach Saviano.
Oh, it's really a pleasure for me. As you can tell, I'm passionate about it and I'm blessed and I'm feel fortunate to be able to convey my thoughts and fortunate to call you a friend. Thanks a
I,
lot.
Thanks, Coach, and I feel like the world is blessed to have you with it and making it a better place. Thank you, Coach, and have a
Take
great
care.
night. Take care.
All right. Good night.
Good night.